So Meryl, if you want to jump on stage there, that's great. Meryl, great to see you and great to be partnering with Senior Services Alliance again on one of these discussions. For those in the audience, I know a lot of your members are in the audience, but for those that aren't in the audience, tell us a little bit about Senior Service Alliance and what it does.
I will be glad to, but the first thing I want to say is I am so honored that Maryland Relay is part of your group today, because I am partially hearing impaired and I do depend on them for certain things that I have to do in life. So I'm especially honored. So they're a great group. Senior Services Alliance was started 3 years ago. And the main goal is education. We bring on quality speakers. And sometimes I get antsy and I say, Steve, let's do this together, because I know that they're a quality person. Not that everybody's quality, but some are exceptional, especially with the topics that are of interest to our community. As I say, the main goal is education. The secondary goal is to meet quality people in a field that you may be in need of their services or just to find out more. It is very easy to come on board. We meet twice a month, the second and fourth Wednesdays of the month, except for November and December because of the holidays. And send me an email and I'll get you the information so you can get on the list. So thank you. And I'm also honored because I've seen the list of how many Senior Service Alliance members are on this call today.
So, I love it.
Okay, well, thank you.
No, this is great. And Meryl, hang out. Let's welcome our presenter today, Pamela Mills, who's a dementia specialist, an educator, a care manager, and she's going to talk to us about connecting to people with cognitive change, which is a real tricky and tough subject. But Pam, before you dive into this very important topic, give us a little glimpse of who you are and how you sort of progressed in your career to be an expert in this area.
Sure, I'm happy to, Steve, and I'm so grateful to you and to Meryl for allowing me to be a part of today. It's very exciting to share everything that I know and everything that I've experienced with Senior Service Alliance, which I've been a member of for now, what, a year and a half at least, and in pro aging. So start at the beginning. So basically, I actually started working in nursing homes at the tender age of 15. And I was just one of those lucky people who knew my calling at a young age. I used to hang out with my grandfather because he partially lived with us while I was growing up. And I used to joke that when I was 9 years old, I had more friends who were 90 than 9. And it just kind of felt comfortable with me to be with seniors, be with older adults. And that just naturally progressed into a career of working in nursing homes. I actually did go to nursing school for 2 years. And before taking the RN exam, discovered what recreation therapy was by working in that nursing home. And they encouraged me to actually go and find out what therapeutic recreation was. And I left directly from nursing school to the University of Maryland, which brought me to the glorious state of Maryland. And as they say, the rest is the story. I worked in memory cares, assisted livings, both as a therapeutic recreation director, moving up to a memory care specialist. I just found that I had a very connected niche with understanding people living with cognitive change. And it really has become the love of my life. I love what I do. I love connecting with older adults, with people living with cognitive change, and even older adults who are not living with cognitive change. I just feel very comfortable with that. You and I, Steve, we both got to graduate from the Erickson School also. So I got my master's in the management of aging services from the Erickson School. And I love that opportunity as well.
That's great. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I think we're connected on Facebook. So I saw Did you just jump out of a plane not too long ago?
I did. That's how I celebrated my 50th birthday. So, and I dyed my hair purple.
All right.
So my husband and I decided, instead of buying, new little tchotchkes for each other for birthdays and anniversaries and such, we're going to gift each other with adventures. So that was this year's adventure, is I got to skydive, albeit tandem, because the guy that was behind me was in it just as much as I was. I figured he wanted to survive, I was going to survive. And it was really fun. I really loved it.
That's awesome. Congratulations. And well, I'm going to duck behind the curtain here, but I want to remind the audience that just, if you've got any, you might have a question right now about communicating with one of your loved ones, type it in. And, but at any point in Pam's presentation, just type in your questions, and Pam, check in with us periodically, and I'll let you know if anything's come up that might be relevant to something that you just said. But I'll duck behind the curtain, and we're really excited to hear what you have to say today.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Steve.
Okay, so you'll share your screen.
Okay. So Steve is actually going to help me out in the very beginning. If you can play that clip for me.
Oh, you want me to do that now?
Yep.
Okay, great. Here, let me do that. Hold on.
Parking here.
Natson.
Oh, hey, Natson. What's in a hashu?
Padding.
Lining, panning, barbeting, the minimus, hein?
Anemonic. What's hard with the head node?
It's carpetable. Hashing guards, actually. Tracy Paladin having it since like 4 day while I was a soap and an ottoman or something. It was palatable.
Tracy was a Normicon?
Yeah, Ashton part though. Mandolin, that older combing dorm dot. Yeah, that heart, the actual placency, and over it was draped like 6 or something. I mean, strange me out, and it was palatable. It's chalked over now, but hey, did you wet her after it?
No, only stone pieces, bud pieces, and HP pieces.
What divided the acorn pieces?
Kind of part. He's hoarding his packing. Is he having it older?
Older with a leak, yeah.
Right. I heard you wouldn't treat that without a Parkinson's.
Poor the Parkinson's is actually Lancaster. Shim was the part of it that I didn't want to open for, because, I mean, I thought the hand sticks was better, so did Corbin, but the phasing had a little baggage or something. It was palatable.
Did Storn?
Yeah, Corbish.
How Corbish?
Prison for me to bottom one of those bi-fence things?
Yeah, that's Corbish.
I know. Hey, have you seen any of those Paggarts screened out?
No, how does that stuff?
Yeah. So it frames in a Pirtle or something, right? But there's hash fectins that rub on the same hinge. Those are tenation, subination, and exination, but the exination ships a little flowerlessly, so you can kind of like barbit it or something. Yeah, I mean, I thought it was ominous, but it shouldn't do that to sevens.
Why the sevens?
Because sevens are the ones that pillow every time taming was surfaced at enemy. Dude, if you don't plug it, you could ask. I mean, plaques and plaques, those are both undersided.
Sure.
Yeah, so are guys in sevens.
But the sevens had the head cut back.
Yeah, sure, but that was centile. This is markup.
That it was centile.
Centile with an aim, yeah.
Sort of win. How's the carnival?
Shows out. He's white wiring now.
Okay, Steve, thank you very much.
Carding pad, pardon.
Okay, so let me get back to my share. So while you were all watching that, I'm not sure if you were able to hear exactly what they were saying, but how did that feel? And when you were listening to what was going on, in fact, hold on a minute, I'm trying to get up to the top where I can get into slideshow. My thing is
okay, if you see where it says slide.
Yeah, it was blocked. So hold on. Okay.
There you go.
There we go. Okay, wait. Okay. So how did that feel? So when you were watching that clip, I don't know if you all heard, he was talking in gibberish. He was having this conversation with this person on the phone, and he was using words, and he was having this conversation very fluidly. However, hopefully you did not understand anything that he was saying. And when we're first paying attention to a conversation, it's important to note that we are paying attention to the words, we're paying attention to the emotions, we're paying attention to the inflex of a person's voice. We're showing up to the conversation with our own expectations, with our own ideologies of the tone and the volume that we're supposed to be hearing. We're watching the body language, because communication is complex. It is both conscious words and conscious thoughts, as well as unconscious behaviors and unconscious expectations and unconscious ideas of what will be happening in the moment that we are communicating, which is why when we are experiencing communication, it's very difficult to understand sometimes if you are having a cognitive change or cognitive loss. The brain is constantly changing as we're getting older, and we're learning new skills, and we're also losing skills. And if communication was simply words, it would be so much easier, but it's not. It's socialization, it's intention, it's emotion. And as a person's brain is changing, we lose the ability to socialize, to connect, to stay in contact with the understanding of what is happening in that conversation. And it makes us feel very frustrated a lot of times when we're seeing a person who is maybe in the earlier stages of cognitive change or the middle stages of cognitive change, beginning to become frustrated or beginning to shy away from wanting to continue to socialize with their lifelong friends and even sometimes their family members. We might not understand why they are so wanting to back off and not continue to be in life as they were before. And it's because of that efforting, that difficulty that they're experiencing in connecting with people because of the way that their brain is interpreting the world around them. Because communication is so much more than words. It's verbal, it's both using recognizable words, that's only 7%. It's the tone of voice. So if I was going to be talking to you, or let's say Thanksgiving is coming up and we're sitting at the Thanksgiving table, and I'm going to turn to you and say, pass the potatoes. What are you going to do? Most likely you're going to pass the potatoes to me. But if I was going to look at you and say, pass the potatoes, you might throw the potatoes at my head. And of course, that's going to lead to a whole different type of interaction, because it has to do with gestures, with body language, with tone of voice. And so much is going on with a person who is living with cognitive change and their ability to understand and comprehend and participate in all of that. Because what dementia does is it destroys, in many cases, communication capability. Communication helps us share our preferences. It gives us the opportunity to interact through our personality, to connect with loved ones, to understand the world around us. And because of the disorder and cognitive changes and what is happening on the cellular level of the brain, cognitive impairment leaves a person unable to maybe even think their own thoughts or understand their own thoughts or understand the words that they're hearing, which will lead to frustration at best and become exhausting and sometimes even terrifying at worst. So as care partners, as people who are professionals as well as family members who are interacting with people living with cognitive change, we need to be bridge builders and becoming very skilled at the ability to communicate and the ability to what I often refer to as connecting with a person living with cognitive change. We become those bridge builders. We're willing to connect through our own understanding of perhaps what that person is experiencing through empathy. But we have to understand that stress is a big part of this. So we might have to work extra hard to be patient, to seek to understand, to let go of our needs, to let go of the ideas that what we think a person should be able to do or might be specifically challenged with. Because as the brain is changing, these experiences can fade and can become stronger, where sometimes it will appear as if the person completely understands us, and they might, and then there's times where they will lose that ability to understand. Sensory also has a lot to play with this, and as we know, as what Meryl shared, and as our host, our sponsors have shared, hearing loss plays a significant role also in the ability to understand. And when you have a person who is experiencing hearing loss as well as cognitive change, that communication becomes even more strained, which can lead to more stress, to more efforting, and that leads to more difficulties with understanding. Because communication and connection are the keys to problem solving. So what we are often doing in our lives is communicating what we need and how we need it. And a person who is living with cognitive change is often trying to get certain needs met, whether it's just the need to socialize, the need to connect, the need to be understood, the need to be appreciated, the need to be recognized. It could be those physical needs, the need for hunger, the need for thirst, the need for interaction, for connection, for understanding. And it is through all of these words and these interactions that we're able to let the world know who we are and what we need. And that happens through communication. So being able to communicate, being able to be a bridge builder is so essential, because we're not going to be able to get exactly into that other person's world. They're still living the world through their own brain, through their own conscious experience of what they are experiencing. And it's going to be very hard. We can try to understand it. We can empathize with it. We can validate who they are and what they're attempting to say and our desire to connect with them. But our points of view and our experiences in that moment are going to be still completely different. There's my point of view and there's going to be their point of view. And so we need to be a bridge builder. We need to kind of bridge the gap through our communication, through our empathy, and through our active listening. So inclusion and familiarity are the key to that connection. We never want to speak at a person or talk at a person to show up with this assumption that we know what they want and we know what they need, that we can define them as a human being, whether it is a person living with cognitive change, to say, oh yes, I know what you as an older adult living with cognitive change needs. You need to play bingo. You need to move into an assisted living. You need to move into a memory care. You need me to help you. You need other people to help you. Here, let me help you. And when we do things like that, what we're doing is we're showing up with our own agenda. We're showing up with our own expectations, and we're not really listening. So one of the most important things that we can do as bridge builders, as professionals of those supporting and assisting people living with cognitive change, is to not forget that this is a care partnership. And when I say partnership, I mean that there are two people in that partnership. There is not just a caregiver, but there is also a care receiver, and there is a person who is that care receiver is doing much more than just receiving. They are participating. They are still wanting to let you know what they need and how they need it and why. So it is so important that we include them. It is so important that we let them know that we care about their opinions, that we care what they're experiencing, and we are listening to what they are trying to communicate to us. So it's the desire to connect. It's about wanting to reach out. It's about feeling familiar. It's about feeling understood. And as human beings, we're just naturally social species. We can't live alone, although sometimes we might want to. Me being, people never believe it, the introvert that I am, I call myself a functioning extrovert because I can function quite well as an extrovert, but then I need to recover in my introverted world. But being around people is just so important for our health and well-being. And they've even shown that isolation, that when an older, particularly an older adult or an older adult living with cognitive change is isolated, their health declines significantly and sometimes even rapidly. So for a person who's living with that cognitive change, it is so essential for us to connect with them, to let them know that we are paying attention to them, that we see them as a human being, as somebody who is equal to ourselves and to the world that we are participating in that moment. So connection provides for better communication. So how do we connect? We notice the person beyond the task that we're doing. So if it's a healthcare task, we are not focusing on whatever that task is, whether it is going in, if they're living in an assisted living, going into their room and helping them with an activity of daily living, whether it's assisting them with eating or just having a conversation with them. We're not focused on the task as much as we're focused on the person that we are connecting with. We are there to get to know who they are. We're there to get out of our head. We are there to get out of our thoughts, but to use our experience of that person in that moment to truly note moment by moment what that person is saying and how they're saying it, and maybe why they're saying it, and what they're attempting to say, and what their emotions are. That is actively listening. So actively listening is being in the moment. It's not being in your head. So there's a difference between active listening, just hearing words, and kind of ignoring the person. So how would you feel if somebody was standing in front of you and you're expressing your needs and they just were nodding their head? And you can tell when somebody's not listening. You can tell when somebody's not really connecting with you. And then you finish what you're saying, the words come out of your mouth and they're just like, okay, I'll be back. Just you wait, I'll be back. And you really feel unheard, unconnected, unseen, misunderstood. So it's really, really important in that connection to be in that moment 100%. Put the phones down. If you can put them in your pocket and try to ignore, unfortunately, that technology of the smartphone has really made us into worse communicators and worse connectors because we're attempting to multitask. We're trying to pay attention to something outside of just the interpersonal. And we have to do whatever we can to connect to that interpersonal, to be attentive and not to zone out. So that has to do with us living that person's truth, to find out what is it that they believe, what is it that they feel like they need, to try and find out what their point of view is, to identify their feelings, to identify their needs. All of this has to do with emotionally connecting. We can do that through showing respect and unconditional positive regard. For those of us who are familiar with the Rogerian method of psychology and counseling, it's so important to note into a positive regard with that person, give compliments, see them, reassure them, praise them, help them know that you are there and that you are listening and that you care. Share your own feelings, but then also there's a lot of nonverbal approaches that we can do, because as I noted, that communication is far beyond words. Words are only 7% of an interaction. So it's about approaching from the front of the person, maybe standing a little slightly to the side. You don't want to be directly eye to eye, forward facing, front facing, because that can sometimes be intimidating. But you want to make eye contact, but not be creepy about it. So it's kind of important to note how you are making eye contact, that you're relaxed, You want to assure that that connection is happening, that that person is seeing you and listening to you, by staying at that I person's level, noticing their facial expressions, and using touch if touch is welcome. So connection is so much about watching that person and being in that person's world. So we want to be aware of our approach. We want to make sure that we're not approaching the person from behind, because that's important even if there's a hearing impairment. We don't want to just walk up behind a person and tap them on the shoulder, because that can lead to startling. So we want to be not too much in that person's bubble space. Again, we don't want to be too close, but we don't want to be too far away. We want to make that eye contact first. We would like to smile if smiling is appropriate in the moment. And how would we know if smiling is appropriate in the moment? The other person is capable and able to smile back. If you see a person who is crying, who is upset, who is angry, we don't want to show up and just start smiling at them, because that can give that message that if they're angry, that we're not connecting with, we're not valuing or validating their anger, we're not validating their emotion in the moment. So if a person is angry or tearful, what we want to do is we want to just show up more with a neutral face. We always want to identify ourselves, say, you know, hi, I'm Pam, and I can see you're upset, and I'm here to see if I can help with what you might need right now. Let's see what we can do together. Invite touch through that outstretched hand if touch is welcome, but always let that person lead. Truly, communication and connection, particularly with a person living with cognitive change, is about letting that person lead. So we're showing that we care. We're being friendly. We're being concerned. We're figuring out what that person believes or thinks. And we try to understand their point of view, because we understand that sad emotions are normal, that living in a world that you might not understand in that moment, or you might not be able to connect with for whatever reason, whether it is a sensory impairment or a cognitive change that is going on, can be very scary. And that fear is understood, that fear is normal. Grief is normal, loss is normal, feelings of loss are normal for all that person is going through in that moment. And so we want to validate that experience by showing that we care, showing that we know that this is difficult. We know that this is overwhelming. We know that this is challenging, and we see that. And we can reassure that person, even if we don't have the words to say. Because there's many ways to connect, through just offering understanding, through listening, through doing a task together, through smiling, like I said, in the appropriate moment, through holding a person's hand, maybe just sitting outside together, maybe just asking the person what their opinion is and what they need, or just being in the environment with them, doing a social task together. But overall, I cannot stress enough how important it is to listen. Because when you're listening, you're validating that person's being in that moment with you. It's, again, not just a caregiver. It is a care partner. It is somebody who is seeing that that other person is there. And when a person feels validated, it increases, it opens up the door to communication. It's saying, hey, I'm here and I see you, and I want to help, and I want to listen, and I want to understand. Then we maybe stop using words and we listen. Then the person has a greater opportunity to connect back with us, to communicate back with us. And there's less of a chance they're going to be frustrated with us, who's not listening, rather than when they know we're listening, when they know that we want to assist, that we want to see and be a part of their life and their experience and hear their words and assist them. They feel better, and there's less frustration, there's less efforting. So how do we do that? How do we become empathetic? It's something that is, yes, it's very natural for some people, but for others, it does take work. It takes work to, particularly these days where we are often multitasking, to get out of our own world, to get out of where we think we need to be in that moment, or where we think that person needs to be in that moment, to leave that behind. We have to be aware of the other person's concerns. We have to be aware that fear and distress and stress and grief and loss are normal. That frustration is normal if you cannot communicate, if you cannot understand the world, if you cannot understand the people around you, that frustration is normal. We have to try to be patient, and we have to understand that the other person might not be patient. So we want to really connect human to human and seeing beyond the frustrations and the stress and the tasks. And that's how we become more empathetic. So what's non-empathy? It's definitely not using your own agenda. It's not showing up with your own needs. It's not trying to divert, distract, redirect. Oh, don't cry, just come play bingo. Or you have no reason to feel that way. Or, oh, I'm sorry you're feeling that way. Okay, let's just go. Let's just move on. It's not lying to somebody, for sure. It's not, hey, if they're asking for their husband and you know that husband passed away, saying, oh, your husband will be home soon, he'll be here later, just so that you can not participate in that conversation anymore and move on. It's not patronizing. It's not saying, come on, you'll be okay. The person who's living with cognitive change, let's be real, they're not going to be okay. It's a very difficult, challenging, and sometimes very traumatic experience that goes on for years, sometimes 10 or 20 years. So not patronizing the person, but trying to connect with them, seeing that they are living in the moment and that they're not suffering in the moment. So it's the use of words also, being connected with them in that living moment, to see what they need, to see who they are. So let's practice. We need to practice by talking to our friends, by connecting with others, by making an effort to listen more, to speak less. Even when you're in a situation that you feel very comfortable, whether it's with your spouse or with your family, just try to take a moment to consciously get out of your head, to try and spend more time leaning in to that person and what they are trying to say. So if that person does not have cognitive impairment, practice your listening, practice your closing your mind down just a little bit and slowing your own thoughts and leaning into what that person might be attempting to say or might be attempting to need. We want to be in that moment. So psychosocial needs you might be familiar with: love, emotional support, trust, respect, dignity, safety, and security. These are all things that every person needs. And so how we listen is by recognizing those psychosocial needs, by noticing that a person wants to feel connected to, needs to feel loved, needs to feel that emotional support, needs to feel respected, needs to feel heard, and needs to trust. When I'm training people who are professional caregivers, nurses, CNAs, so many of you who've come to join this conversation, I refer to trust as a bank account. It is something that has to be built up before it can be withdrawn from. So when you meet somebody or you're having an interaction with somebody, whether it's a professional interaction or it's an interaction with a family member, that trust has to be there. And if it's the very beginning of a connection, we start by building that trust, and we build that trust by listening and connecting and giving that person the opportunity to know that we care, and that we're not somebody who's there to take something away from them, or to threaten them, or to not listen to them, or to not hear them, or to make them live by our agenda or our needs, that we're paying attention to their needs, and we care to see what they want to see, or what they want for us to see, and what we need, so, and what they need. So it's that listening that builds that trust. And once we build that trust, then we're able to use that trust to continue to support that relationship. So here are some tips for some better listening. Very much about blocking out your distractions. Like I said, is turning off that cell phone if possible, or at least muting it, putting it in your pocket. Thinking while you're listening, try not to be in your own head, but identify the other person's key points by leaning into the words that they're saying. Suspending judgment, trying to understand the other person's point of view. And then we want to resist the evaluating, the criticizing, or giving instant solutions. So we might be thinking about the response that we're going to say while we're hearing the words that that person is communicating. Then you're only about 50% there. We want to be 100% there. We don't want to be as much as in our thoughts and in our response, or in our planned response, as much as we want to be in that moment with that person. So we want to hear what they're saying. We want to connect to what they're saying. And then we might want to pause for a minute and breathe and be like, oh, well, okay, well, this is something that maybe I can help with. So some other examples of some good listening could be just saying some sayings like, what I hear you saying is, summarizing those key points for that person. Or if you're seeing that that person is having uncomfortable emotions, and not just words, just say, well, I can see that you're angry. I can see that you're upset. What can I do right now to help? Show me the best way to assist you. We don't want to make assumptions about what that person needs, but we want to be in that moment. We want to avoid any of the non-listening habits. We want to make sure that we're in that moment with that person, that we're not talking over the person, that we're not correcting the person, that we're not being defensive. That's something that sometimes happens just automatically if we feel like the person is upset about something, that we need to come up with some sort of rationale or reason why maybe we're not the cause of their upset, or what the reason behind their upset is. We can always apologize, but we most importantly just need to listen. We don't want to doodle or draw while someone's listening to us. We want to, again, look at that eye contact and connect with that person. Try not to fidget, and try to listen more with a face that is interested in what that other person is saying. So we don't want to ignore. We don't want to finish a person's thought for them. We want to switch the focus of the conversation to you by telling a similar experience. So if the person's telling you something that they need, or something that they want, or something that has happened to them, we don't want to say, oh, well, yeah, you know what? That happened to me the other day, and you're not going to believe what I did about it. Well, this is, you know what? This is what I did. And that might make you feel a whole lot better if you do this, where we're now suddenly giving advice. You don't necessarily need to do that either, because again, just being with that person and validating that, wow, that must have upset you. And I can see how that would be upsetting from your point of view. So let's see, how can I help? We don't want to, again, overdo the head nods and the uh-huhs. When we're listening, we want to be in that moment, because sometimes when we're saying to a person, particularly a person who's living with cognitive change, if we're saying things like yes and uh-huh, with a person's maybe challenge to comprehend what we're saying in return, they might think we're giving them permission, or we're agreeing with them over a certain thing. So for example, if a person with cognitive change was experiencing some suspiciousness and was saying, there was a person who came here and they stole all my clothes. And I was just going, yes, yeah. I might be sending them the message that, oh yeah, I knew that that person was stealing your clothes and I didn't do anything to stop them. So we want to try and avoid the ahas and the yeses and the head nods, particularly with a person who might be in a moderate stage of cognitive change, because that might send the wrong message. So we want to always find a way to practice our communication. And this is one exercise that I recommend, is to just spend, a few minutes with somebody for 5 minutes, maybe it's a colleague, and just take turns speaking one at a time and just trying to lean in. And you can use different topics. You can use a topic about yourself and your experiences, and just try not to speak while the other person is talking. Try not to take notes. Try the best you can to just simply listen, to try and tune in. And it's a great team building experience if you are working on a team with people, to try this out for a while, where you can have team members just come together and just think of a topic and talk about it, and take that time, that 5 minutes, to really just listen to what that person is saying. And then when the timer goes off, you can switch and then share your experiences. Say, well, what did that feel like to listen, like 100% listen to that person for those 5 minutes? And you'd be surprised how 5 minutes might feel like a very long time in that moment, because we're so sometimes intent on talking, on our thoughts and our words, and trying to make that person realize that we're paying attention by us nodding our head, or or yeah, or okay. It can sometimes feel so difficult to just resist saying anything. And that's where sometimes so many of us need to practice. I know that was a huge one for me, learning how to just be quiet and tune in. So I've talked about a whole lot so far. So I want to just check in a little bit and see if there are any questions or any thoughts about what I've been talking about when it comes to the listening and the sharing, before we move on to some of those barriers to communication. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute, and maybe we can talk face to face.
Great. No, this is excellent. And let's see, I'm scanning chat to see if there's any comments that might be related to this. Meryl says, this is so logical. This is what we do when we're interacting with each other in business situations. Yes, I totally agree. Irene says, I've made the mistake of permitting my Parkinson's husband's aide to text often instead of focusing on him. I would appreciate suggestions on how to initiate this difficult conversation.
That's a great question. We're so used to now relying on that smartphone, but what that smartphone often does is it takes us away from that human to human contact. And honestly, sometimes it just feels more comfortable for us to use that technology, because then we don't have to have those difficult conversations, sometimes face to face. So learning how to be comfortable with discomfort is honestly a big part of working with people who have cognitive change, and being in that moment with that person, because we're going to sometimes see things that are very uncomfortable. We're going to participate in communications and emotional experiences that are uncomfortable. And so being able to kind of just take that deep breath and just say, well, you know what, I think we need to talk about how some of the best ways to communicate with each other might be. And with that caregiver, I might pull her aside away from your loved one and just say, you know what, I know sometimes it's really comfortable to text to me, but I really value us talking together, because there is so much that you have to offer. And I want to learn from you, and you might, have something that you want to say to me. And it's sometimes so much better for us to just talk in person.
Great. Let's see, great suggestions there. Patience, Meryl says, patience is a virtue, and we all must take this up another notch. And let's see, Irene has her hand raised. I don't know if that's an accident, Irene, but your mic is open. Do you have a question or comment?
I do. The difficult conversation is that I want my aide not to be texting to her friends. I want her to be focused on my husband. There's always the dismissal route, but I don't want to do that.
So thank you for your question, Irene. And honestly, that the only way that you can really have that conversation is by having that conversation. And that's where some people don't necessarily feel comfortable with conflict. And I think that's important to develop that rapport, first of all, with the person who is your professional caregiver, to make sure that she knows that you see her, that you are recognizing her as an individual as well as a professional, and as a professional caregiver, that she has that relationship with your husband, and just get to know her. There's a lot of times where there are cultural norms that sometimes get in the way with forming that communication. And so when somebody is coming into your home, of course, there's a strong intimacy there, that they're in your home. And so if I was going to just come into a person's home, I'd feel very uncomfortable, because I don't know who this person is. They're trying to do a job. I don't know anything about that person. I want to be seen. I want to be recognized. I want to be validated also as a human being. And so sometimes it's just getting to know that caregiver and starting a rapport with them and be like, oh my gosh, how long have you been doing this job? And what do you like about your job? And, tell me about your family. Tell me about your kids. Tell me about, what brought you into caregiving. Kind of start that rapport from day one. And then when you are having that connection, you're building that relationship again, you're building that trust. Then if something goes wrong, or something that needs to be corrected, it makes it so much easier to have those conversations. Be like, oh, the other day I saw you kind of texting, while you were working, and it would really be so much better, I think, for my husband if you weren't on the smartphone. And here, let me give you some suggestions on how to connect with him. Some things that he enjoys doing, some things that he used to do prior to his diagnosis, was some things that are fun for him, and some of his hobbies, his interests, and really just kind of be that connector between, like, you're connecting to her, you're giving her ways to connect to him, and you're having that relationship. So it goes just beyond a caregiver relationship and into one that is a human experience of humans supporting each other. Hopefully that helps.
No, that was good, Pam. And another thing, Irene, that is, because I've dealt with this with employees, is what is an ideal outcome that would make you happy? So perhaps you can work together to say, I recognize that communicating with your family and friends over text is important, but could we make those at specific times during the day? Then I'll be less frustrated and won't think that you're doing it all the time, Thanks, Irene. And then Lynn has a really good topic, is suggestions on how to respond to, when is my husband going to get here when he is deceased? I know that a lot of folks with cognitive impairment, may make comments similar to that, where they're asking for somebody who's either not there or who can't be there.
That's a really great question. And honestly, I have a whole new training on that particular, having difficult conversations, with a person living with cognitive change. My quick answer would be to just say, tell me about your husband. Tell me, try not to focus. We don't want to tell the person that they passed away, particularly like repeatedly, because then they might not remember. They might not, because whatever's happening with their cognitive loss, it might be short-term memory loss, there might be long-term memory loss. It could be that they've blocked out that grief. So we really don't want to focus more on the grief experience, but we want to focus, or triggering that grief experience, but we want to focus on their present experience, on their present memory, or that present belief of where that person is and what they're doing, or why they're thinking of them. A lot of times when a person is asking about a spouse, it's because they're feeling lonely. It's because they're feeling insecure. It's because they're feeling isolated. They're asking for the person that helps them feel the most connected and the most loved. So you could say things like, tell me about your husband, or I have some really great memories about, I don't know, Bob, and I'd love to share them too. So tell me some of yours and I'll share. Or if it's, if it's your father, say, yeah, I really miss Dad too. Let's look at some pictures of him. And yeah, but I wouldn't say things like he died, or he died 5 years ago, he's not coming home. Those types of things where you're constantly rehashing a potential negative, because that could lead to more grief and more loss and more stress for the person living with cognitive change, particularly if they don't remember it.
Okay, great. And then Pam, would you be open to sharing your slides? We've had a few requests for that.
Yes, I definitely would.
Okay, so if you just email those to me afterwards in a PDF document, that would be great.
Okay.
Wow, these hours just burn by. I'm always amazed whenever I look at the clock, and I was like, holy cow, it's only 5 minutes. But Meryl, why don't you jump on stage with me, and let's, I always like to sort of say to our panel members, if you have any closing statements, because that sometimes spurs some additional questions. But I have copied Pam's contact information into chat, and you'll be able to reach out to her if you want to dive deeper into these topics, or you want her to speak to your group about this topic. But let's see, Pam and Meryl, would you like to sort of share any closing thoughts?
Absolutely. I think people on this call were so intent on listening to what Pam had to say. Very few people put their contact information in the chat. And there's a lot of good quality people on this call. And I think, we're also supposed to be interacting with each other and getting to know each other better. And I have gone out of my way to go and hear topics from social workers. And I am just finding that there are such wonderful people. And that's how I kind of found out about Pam. And I hope other people will do that when they go to webinars, seminars, Zoom calls. If they think the person is quality, approach Steve or approach myself or Joe Sperling or Aaron Pickrell, and let's get them to share their knowledge with all of us. It only helps. So thank you very much.
Excellent. Oh, let's see. Mary has her hand raised. I don't know if this is a mistake, but let's see here, Mary, if you want to unmute. If it's not a mistake, you can unmute. If it is a mistake, just drop your hand. And Pam, while we're waiting to see if Mary's got a question, any closing words for today?
So I just wanted to let people know that if they are interested in some of my trainings, I do ongoing trainings both in person and on Zoom. And there are probably a few people here who've taken my certified dementia practitioner course. If you would like to become a certified dementia practitioner, you can reach out to me on my email, and I can schedule a class either in person or over Zoom for you and your group. I'd love to do that. And I also just I work as a care manager with Corwood Care, who I know is on this call, which I absolutely love. It's a wonderful organization, wonderful company I'm happy to be a part of, and serve as their dementia specialist and as their care manager. But please do reach out to me. I do have my personal email on there as well if you do have any questions, and we can just talk. And I serve as a dementia consultant. I can just answer general questions, and any way that I can assist, I'm always happy to.
Excellent. All right. Well, let's see. Okay, Mary. Okay, let's. Okay, so somebody says I'm unable to share the chat. When I post the recording, I always post the chat up there. So Rebecca, when you see the recording on proaging.com, you'll be able to see the chat. Okay. Thanks everybody. And thanks, Meryl. And I can't wait till I get my next phone call from you on the next topic that we're going to partner on.
I actually have two to discuss with you.
No, you rock.
I try. I'm a big believer in sharing.
All right.
So, and it seems to be working. So
See you all
Yes.
soon. Thank you.
All right, bye. Thanks for coming.